Welcome back to Consider This. Melisa and Sharaad on the show with you tonight. We're talking to Zaid Ibrahim, former minister. We're asking him to recalibrate Malaysia Baru. Now, a couple of things you said before the break struck me, and I'd like you to elaborate. You said politics has changed and people's expectations have changed, and now leaders need to better explain their decisions. So, three components there that I wanted to challenge. Has politics changed? How has people's expectation changed, and how has Pakistan Harapan failed in explaining their decision making? Can you attempt to go through all three, please?
Well, I think people, the world over, I think people, the voters have come out in droves indicating their preferences, you know, one way or the other, whether it is Brexit, whether it's in America, and everywhere else. So the voters have changed, and they want whatever they want the leaders to deliver that.
But has politics in Malaysia changed? Have we moved away from race-based politics, from leadership politics, personality politics?
No, the politics do the same in that sense, because the leaders don't want to change the narrative, because people follow what the leaders say, generally. You know, so if the narrative remains the same, of course it will be the same. For example, if you tell the people that Malays and Muslims must be all together, the enemies are all of us, the people probably believe you. But it's not true that if you are together on that basis, you'll be strong. Like I said, the Arabs have been together for years, thousands of years, with the same language, same religion. They cannot even defend the West Bank. You cannot be strong just because you're of the same race. You cannot be smart just because you're of the same religion. So, you have to change the narrative. Coming back to Pakistan, the problem, I think, is that they stood on the ground of reforms, change, the 50 years of UMNO Barisan rule, good governance, rule of law, all the big words, environment. But they were not able to fulfill it because they probably don't believe themselves. I mean, if you look at, for example, Sedition Act. You know, we have been fighting for this for so long, and we wanted to remove it because we wanted the people to be free to talk without fear. If the people don't talk freely and afraid, you cannot solve the problem of the people.
I wonder if this, and let me be provocative here, that the problem is Dr. Mahathir. He was late to the game. He didn't do 20 years of reformasi politics. You know, he, in fact, initially, if you remember, when he joined the Bersih protest, he said he didn't want to sign on to the platform of what Bersih stood for. I mean, he was very late in agreeing to the agenda, and just after the general election, he kind of poo-pahhed the manifesto, saying, well, actually, we put it together in order to make trouble for the government of the day, the Barisan Nasional. I mean, he was a man who's not sounded like he was committed to it. Difficulties aside, he wasn't really committed to it.
I don't think he was born a liberal, a Democrat, you know.
And he's certainly not involved into one either.
Yeah, but I think he did what he could do. I mean, in the sense of the fact that he joined us, I think it's already a plus. But we cannot stop there. We cannot let him set the narrative. The Pakistan leaders, the other parties, the so-called original group, must be able to stand up and say we want this change. And not cosmetic change, real change.
But why are they standing up to Mahathir? Why does it seem they're subservient
Because
to him?
I suppose the leaders are all in the cabinet. And sometimes when you're in the cabinet, you don't want to stand up too much because you might be asked to leave. And, you know, it's nice to be a minister, you know. So
well, you know, because you were one.
Well, I was only for a while, but there are a lot of things that is nice about being a minister. So sometimes it's difficult to balance, you know, your willingness to stand up for what you believe in and what Mahathir wants. I mean, for example, Linas.
Yes.
And then there's a new contract in rare earth in Perak. I mean, those days we were totally against this because it's against the environment. The Kiara Rimba, we would not have even give a second thought to this idea of development there. But suddenly, it becomes attractive again. Because some people in Bersatu probably prefer, have a positive thing about Linas for whatever reason. But the general trust of the of the people. Actually, they want a cleaner environment, they want a safer environment, they want cleaner government. So leaders must be able to meet those expectations, in my view. And if you can't, then you lose your credibility.
Well, Zaid, you wrote a very interesting piece recently about calling for a unity government, saying that it's time for a unity government. Can you explain what you mean by that? Why did you write that the country needs a unity government that's willing to share power?
Well, I wrote that in exasperation more than anything else. Mainly, what I see today is that people are playing these musical chairs in politics, maybe to isolate Anwar or maybe to prop up somebody else. I mean, these are not good motives. These are very disruptive in politics. Mm. So when I say unity, it's not unity against someone else. I think if you are more united, you get the better pool of ministers and you have less politicking. When you have less politicking, less shouting in parliament, less of this, then you will have more time to work. Because we have miles and miles to go. We are far behind others.
I want to ask you about that. It seems to me that part of the problem with say, comparing Malaysia to Singapore is that the complete dominance of a single party over Singapore's politics and the ability for the party to insulate itself from public pressures, one, and then therefore develop a technocratic elite to run the country. Mm. Now, Malaysia is much more democratic, and the cabinet reflects the composition of the coalition as much as it does competence, right? Much more about the composition of the coalition than it does about competence. How do we solve that problem? We're democratic, and I think we want to be democratic, but that leaves us with...
Germany is the most powerful economy in Europe. And Germany has got so many parties. Germany has got, in Bavaria, there's one group that controls it, up the north, you can name it. And yet, they are able to get the best people because they are more mature in their politics, they are more knowledgeable, they form coalitions before the election, and then they decide to form the government together amongst those who agree on big principles. Mm. You know, there are countries that have got many, many political parties. There's no excuse. It's more difficult, perhaps. Even in China, a monolithic communist party has a way of, you know, they're a way of getting the top leaders, the right leaders, to go to the top. I mean, Deng Xiaoping and Lee Kuan Yew, I mean, both great leaders for their respective countries. They were all those autocratic. They were able to get through young, talented leaders to the top.
And the Malaysian case is that we are rewarded with cabinet
positions?
We are rewarded
for loyalty.
Okay.
We are rewarded for don't raise difficult questions. We have a totally different value system, and that's why it makes me exasperated. That's why I said, why don't then we just have one party made up of so many, and then we just get the best people to run the country, because at the moment we're not getting there, you know. I mean, if you look at our shared prosperity vision, we're supposed to solve the problems of poverty. We're supposed to solve the problems in 10 years. We couldn't solve it in 30 years. So when people talk about that, when ministers talk about that, it doesn't make sense, you know. When we talk about other things of reform, the other day, the Minister of Education, I think, gave a reply. Why is it that we cannot get UEC approved? You know, the certificate exam, competency for Chinese independent school? And the reply came, oh, we have to have a task force. We spent probably a lot of money. And then we have to see whether it violates the federal constitution, or whether it violates the social contract, whatever that means. My question to you is this. We have allowed vernacular schools for the last 50 years. We have funded them. Every election we give them money. And then when they are ready to enter the university, we say, no, no, no.
We don't recognize
it. Violates the social contract. It violates the federal constitution. It violates everything. What does it show? It does show that we are not thinking straight. It's not fair to the student. If they have the competency and the ability tested by other bodies, independent bodies, then their right to the public institution and university should be as a matter of right. But we cannot make that decision because we don't think straight.
All right, well, more with former Minister Zaid Ibrahim coming up on Consider This, Don't Go Anywhere. We'll be right back.